Hey everybody, welcome to Listen Money Matters. We make money your bitch. My name is Matt and I'm here as always with Andrew. Andrew, how are you and what are you drinking?
Awesome, man. I got a nice Belgian. It's Oer beer. It's Oerbier. It's got this little yellow dude on the bottle, 9% APV. Damn tasty.
Starting off early, man. Where do you get all these? Like some of these things that you get I never even heard of.
So we have this liquor store, Sparrows, by us, and they have like a craft section, and it's like the weirdest stuff, and it's pretty cheap actually.
Is it got build your own 6-packs there? I think I've asked you this.
Yeah. I remember I was looking at a local place they didn't have. This is like 8 blocks away, but way better.
Well, I am drinking water because I don't have. I do have.
We know you're drinking water.
Yeah,
you don't have to say it anymore.
I know. Well, I don't know. The last episode, I just drank nothing. So, at least I'm drinking something.
You were barely alive, though.
Yeah, and I'm still recovering. I don't know how many times we're going to mention this, unfortunately, but we just got back from FinCon in New Orleans. We're there for a week, and then I was driving up to New York, met with some folks that some friends from Bloom, and had some drinks with them, and then drove home. And that's just. All I want to do is sleep. Just give me a day. And then today we're podcasting all day. So I need some serious rest.
It's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and you too.
I know. I'm running on fumes.
But we don't have time to rest today because we have a guest on the show today, and we're going to talk about negotiation. And we have a negotiation expert, Dan Green of the negotiationblog.com, and he also has Bridge Consulting, which is you can find at bridgeci.com. Dan, how are you?
I'm great, guys. How you doing?
Drinking anything?
I am drinking a healthy, tall Coca-Cola Zero and also a glass of water. Got to stay hydrated.
Yeah, especially with all that sugar.
Hey, man, there's no sugar in this. This is just sweet, sweet aspartame.
That's the sweet, sweet aspartame. So it's simple to dive into this. I know a lot of people who are listening are probably looking for negotiation tips when it comes to getting a raise, right? That seems to be a common thing. So do you have any, just to just dive right into it, a scenario that I can come up with was I one time went to my boss and I had asked for a raise, and he negotiated with me and said, how about you just sign up instead for our 401k where we offer matching? And I said, okay. And at the time, I had no idea. So technically, I didn't even get a raise because money was actually taken out of my paycheck, even though it's going towards myself. But how does somebody even start off before they even get into the negotiation stage? How should somebody prepare for something like that?
Well, I think that's a great question. It's a question that I get asked a lot. I'm always getting hit up by friends who are trying to get either promotions or raises, or they're negotiating new job offers. And I think just the question that you ask of how should they prepare, most people don't ask themselves. Usually what they'll ask me is, what do I say in order to get a raise?
How do I get more money?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it's a topic that we're never really taught. I don't know if you guys in college or in high school ever took a class on how to negotiate a job offer or how to negotiate a salary. I certainly wasn't until I got into the field of negotiation. Is that something you teach? I'm based in Canada, by the way, so maybe it's something that's more common at colleges down in the States. Do you guys go through that, or do you sort of have to wing it on your own?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I didn't think Andrew had it at college. I certainly didn't have it in high school. You know how I learned it? This is going to sound so bad, but there was a game called Theme Park on Sega, and you had to.
That's a good game.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I played it, man.
And you had to negotiate with the areas to get I don't know to get more money, and it was two hands that came out from the side of the screen, and you would push your hand forward, and then the other hand would come closer to you, and then you would back off a little bit, and you would try to negotiate the lowest price by just playing this hand game, and then until your hands connected and shook, and that's where you land on the price. So that's about as much negotiation education as I had.
Not even related to negotiation.
Nope, not at all. Not even close.
Everything I learned in life, I learned from video games, that sort of thing.
Exactly.
That's super common. Most people are not taught or self-taught. If we're taught at all, most people don't give it a whole lot of thought. Yet, if you watch people negotiate their salaries, you start to notice that there are patterns, and most people are negotiating it the same way. So I don't know if you guys can either speak from your personal experience, or you have friends of yours, or maybe people who you've worked with. Like, how do you hear people generally, if they come up to your boss, if I'm your boss, what do people generally say? If you want a salary, what would you generally say to me?
If you were my boss and I wanted to
Yeah.
get a raise, I think I'd ask for some time first. I mean, that would
Okay.
be, I would be nervous as all hell. And I would walk up and I'd say, hey, is there a chance later today or tomorrow we can sit down and have a conversation? That's where I would start.
Okay,
And I
that's
know-
actually better than most people who would just barge into the conversation. So creating a space to have that conversation is a good start.
Yeah, like kick in the door, say, money, give it to me.
Yeah, that's not
not
that
good.
hasn't been working.
No, okay. No, that's what I would do. I would just ask, I would set up a personal one-on-one meeting with my boss, make sure there was time dedicated to it. And that's my first step.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew?
I mean, I would do the same, and I think it would just what's worked for me, and I definitely am not like a pro. I just throughout the year, instead of like necessarily pulling them into a room, I would just like give indications that I would like a raise. You know, not like asking for a number, but just kind of like a couple times seed the expectation through the year, and then a hope, I guess, at the end that it was enough.
There's a great cartoon I saw recently, which has a bunch of guys with swords sitting on ostriches, and they're lined up in a battle formation. On the other side, there's these guys in heavy cavalry with rifles, and the speech bubble is hope is not a strategy. And so
It's true.
I say that in jest, but partially, actually, what you guys are saying is even a step beyond what most people do. Most people don't alert their boss prior to actually having the conversation that they're interested in getting a raise, so they blindside them. And secondly, they don't create a space to have that conversation, even if they have their boss's attention. And then when they're in the conversation, and this may resonate with you guys, or you've certainly probably seen other people do it, people tend to give justifications for getting a raise by saying a number of the following things, or any one or a combination. Like, one, look, I have produced so much over the last year since I last had a salary increase that I feel I deserve a raise. Or maybe I've been here for 4 years, therefore I deserve a raise. If you're a freelancer and you're negotiating your rate, the version of that is like, look, I have a track record in my career to be able to charge whatever it is, $100 an hour, $200 an hour. And then the last one that people argue for, usually more junior people, is based on their financial need. I just relocated, I have a wife and kids, or I have student loan debts to pay off, therefore I need a raise. So you guys recognize any of those?
I recognize both of them, and I'm going to assume the second one is probably the worst thing you can do.
Which one, the need?
Yeah, they'll need one.
I was gonna say, like, I think that they all are very self-serving. I don't know actually what to say otherwise, but I could just tell like the common theme is me, 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 me.
And the other thing is I used to keep a work journal, so I would write down like every little tiny accomplishment I'd make, and I would send that over to my boss. Like, here's everything I've done.
Yeah.
Or even if I didn't send it to him, I had it. You know what I mean? I could just, if before I went into ask for a raise, I could look at everything and say, oh, okay, well, if he asks questions, I can start rattling off things that I've done.
Yeah, well, for one, you sound much more organized than most of the people that ask me this question.
Right.
But Andrew, I think you're hitting on the point, which is, these are extremely common. Your listeners will probably recognize them. Most people tend to negotiate their salary that way. I agree that arguing based on what you need is by far the least effective for a couple different reasons. But essentially, the underlying problem is the same. When you're talking about what you have produced, how long you've been here, your track record, or what you need, your focus is twofold. One, it's on yourself, and two, it's on the past, everything you've done up until now. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I am a realist, and I will tell your listeners that those are two things that your boss doesn't really care about.
He already paid you for those, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What your boss is focused on is on themselves and on the company and in the future.
All right. So how do you go about selling that aspect? Like, what are some of the things that people should be doing?
So I think that a couple of things you guys mentioned. Andrew was mentioning that early on he tends to signal that he may want to raise or does want to raise.
Yeah, and I don't know how you actually do that. What do you do? Like, would you wear like a sticker?
No, I mean, I would just tell my boss, I'd be like, I would really like a promotion this year. I'd just like, I'm kind of hoping to make a little bit more money because I want to blah, blah, blah. And I guess it is still me, like, because I would say like, oh, I want to get a house or get married or whatever.
But like when you're like up at the coffee stand, you're just sitting there, drinking a cup of coffee, like, man, I could really use a raise right now. Wink. That kind of deal?
Well, so I was close to my ex-bosses, but like I also was a smoker and they were smokers. So we'd be outside having a smoke break. Like, and we just bullshit about like, I don't know, like Cosmos and stuff. And I just kind of like, yeah, so you think they're giving raises this year? Because like I could really use it. Like stuff like that.
So I think that's not bad. I would actually take it one step farther and sit down with your boss in a meeting and be very deliberate and say, look, here's where I'm interested in going in my career, whether it's a promotion or the next salary level up in your company or above what you're making, and signal very clearly, here's what I want to be making over time. Then the second part is ask them, what would I need to be doing or what would I need to do in order for that to make sense from your side?
So ask your boss that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It sounds really simple, right? Like the boss is going to be the one who's making the decision. Obviously, you would want to ask them, like, why would they want to give you a raise?
I assume they don't want to give you a raise.
I mean, they probably don't if you just come and blindside them and say, okay, look, all things being equal, like you're going to perform, you've been performing, you're going to keep performing. I would rather pay you less.
Sure.
Absolutely. Yet your boss's primary interest is not in paying you less. It's in making more money for the company.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can signal that you want a raise, but you want to do it in a way that makes sense for the company, then it shifts the focus of the conversation to how could I actually be doing my work so that it would be worth it for you to give me a raise?
What happens if he says, well, you need to do X, Y, and Z, and you do like X, Y, and Z, and like, I don't know, another thing, and comes time to get a raise and you don't get one? Like, did he then like call your bluff and now you have to leave because you did what he said and he didn't give it to you?
Well, I think that's a different conversation. And I don't think by signaling up front, you're necessarily, in fact, I would encourage people not to put it on the table like an ultimatum. Like, look, if I don't get a raise by the end of this year, I'm leaving. You could certainly say that. I'm not sure what kind of a message that's going to send to your boss. But it's different than just saying, look, I really want to be, a manager. I want to be a senior manager. I want to be making 20% more than I'm making now. What would I have to do in order to be there?
Yeah, you know what it sounds like? It sounds like it makes you look like you're excited to move up in the company and to really help the company, and that's what their goals are. That's what your boss's goals are. So I think that enthusiasm to want to move up and really do something more for the company is going to show that, you're worth more money. And I can tell you that ultimatum scenario doesn't work. I got fired because of it. So I got another job offer, and I came back to my boss and I said, hey, I got another job offer. This other place, they're paying me, $10,000 more. If you can match that, I'd love to stay here. And he said, okay, Googled my name, and then fired me the next day.
Wait, he Googled your name?
He Googled my name and found out that I had a site about swimming pool care, and I was working for a pool company at the time. And he was looking for excuses to get rid of me. Mm-hmm. So he found what he called a conflict of interest, and I said, well, I had another job. You didn't have to do that. You said, all right, well, good luck in your next position. But he needed that excuse.
Yeah, and people don't respond well to threats.
No, they do not.
That's not news for anybody on this podcast, I'm sure.
I didn't know. Like at the time, I thought it was like a negotiation technique. Like I thought it was like just pit two people against each other, and have them have a go over bidding war over me. Turns out that doesn't really work so well.
Yeah, I mean, to be frank, it actually can sometimes. Unfortunately, there are companies out there that are really cheap, and I've worked with some of them, and the only thing that allows them internally to justify a raise is if they're going to lose someone. That does happen out there. And I think it's a really risky strategy, particularly if you're doing it at the last minute like it sounds in your case. When you're waiting and saying, okay, I'm about to leave, you got to offer me more money to stay. But there's a huge difference between that and asking your boss up front at the beginning of the year and saying, what would I have to do to make it to this next level in terms of my earning potential, in terms of my title, roles, responsibilities, whatever. And I think the reason for that is, it does signal to your boss where your head is at and what kind of a performer you are. At the same time, what tends to happen in these salary negotiations is we guess about what the criteria that they're using to evaluate salary are. So we're thinking, okay, I've been here for 4 years, and the last four people who were here for 4 years also got a salary increase. Well, they may have also done like 4 other things that you didn't see.
Right.
And so as soon as we're leaving it up to guesswork of like, I think that I deserve a raise because I'm doing X, Y, and Z, that may not be relevant at all to your boss. So unless you find that out, it's always going to be a tough conversation at the end.
So when I go like to my boss and I get nervous for sure, but I ask him and I guess maybe it's within my personality. My wife has been at jobs and they like severely underpay her. She's like knocking out of the park. Everyone loves her. Like she's like, the one. But like she can't do it. Like it's like she can't ask for the raise or, that maybe they're not taking her seriously. Is this not to be like sexist, but is this like a common thing with women?
Yeah. So that, maybe we can tackle that as a whole other topic of conversation, but I think that women in negotiation, and I get to ask this question a lot also, like, are women worse negotiators than men? I also know that this topic is a bit of a minefield, especially as like 3 dudes talking about it.
Yeah, I was not expecting that question.
So you have to be a little bit careful whenever you're talking about trends amongst gender or anything else. That being said, there has been a lot of research done on how do women negotiate, and is it different? Is it, for lack of a better term, better or worse than men? And I think to go back to your example, Andrew, there is a lot of research suggesting that women do have trouble asking for more money. And there is a lot of research suggesting actually that women have trouble asking for a lot of different things, asking for a promotion, asking for time off, even around the house, asking for their husband or significant other to share more of a burden of what's going on at home, child rearing, etc. And there's been a number of really good books about that recently. One is called Women Don't Ask by 2 professors whose names escape me right now. And then they wrote a follow-up book about that called Ask For It, which is essentially partly the first book, as well as some tips on how you can actually ask for what you want or what you're worth.
Mm-hmm. I want to go down a scenario path. I think one of the biggest problems with a raise in general is just getting up to guts to start the process. Now, do you think is there any like tips or things to put someone at ease if say like they're heading into the negotiation room? Like, is there things that people worry about but really shouldn't be worried about?
Yeah, I think that there's certainly things that they can do. One, the earlier you start having this conversation, the easier it is, and I'll explain why. Because if you're waiting and sort of saving everything up to ask at the end of the year and when it's time for your performance evaluation, there is a lot of pressure because you're alerting your boss at that time that you want to raise, and it may make the difference of if you stay at the company or if you don't, and a whole bunch of other stuff that you've got going on. Obviously, your income is going to affect. So if you're leaving everything to that one conversation, that's going to be a tough conversation. Mm-hmm. It's easier for most people to have a general conversation up front at the beginning of the year when they first get hired, when they first either receive a raise or a promotion or whatever it is, to say, what is it that I would have to do to get to the next level? Like very concretely. How do you even think about how to award raises? Like what goes into your calculus? What are you looking at when you award $50,000, $100,000, $500,000 a year to someone? How do you even think about that decision? That is a much easier conversation to have because you're not actually asking them for anything. You're just looking to get their perspective.
Right. And you're looking to learn how you can navigate through that.
Exactly.
Interesting. Now, when you go, another problem that I have is, all right, you get up enough guts or nerves or whatever to set the meeting. You have the meeting. You're in the room, right? What are some things you should do to prepare before entering that room? I think a big question that I have is, how do you know how much to ask for?
Mm-hmm. So these are really good questions. I think that a couple different pieces of advice that I would have prior to going in to help you have that conversation in a more productive way. I used to teach negotiation at an MBA program, and all of my students were sort of mid-career, and they were looking to change from one job to the next or negotiate a better position or a better salary once they graduated. So they always asked me about this stuff. It was a huge section of the course that they wanted to focus on. And I always gave the same piece of advice first, which is go in to your second choice job interview first. Negotiate the best possible deal that you can in your second choice. Ask for your 2 weeks to think about that. And during that time, walk into the negotiation with your first choice. And the reason is pretty simple around that because, one, if you have a pretty good deal from your second choice company and you're somewhat excited about taking it and you have that in your back pocket, like how do you feel when you're talking to your boss or your first choice company?
Yeah. Well, I think I lost it. So, I mean, are you saying like it's just, if you go to your second choice first, you're just more relaxed because you've been through it?
Well, one, you're more relaxed you're more relaxed because you've been through it. And two, you still have that as an alternative to walk away to. If you say, look, I need a couple weeks to think about this, which is, totally common and legitimate in the job search, is to ask for 2 weeks to think about the offer. Then when you're negotiating, you feel much more confident because if this doesn't go well, you know you have something to walk away to. You know you're going to have another job.
And is that something you recommend? The idea of like walking away or having enough guts to walk away?
I recommend having something to walk away to for a couple different reasons. Even if you're totally not planning and you're really committed to the company that you're talking to, if you have something to walk away to, you feel much more relaxed. So you're much less likely to take this kind of intransigent positional bargaining approach and get really nervous when it comes to negotiating what's fair compensation. Mm-hmm. The second reason is, how many times have you guys been lying awake at night wondering, like, should I accept this job interview, this job offer or not? Like, I'm sure all of your listeners have been in that position. You're literally losing sleep because you don't know whether or not to accept an offer.
Right.
Those decisions kill me, yeah.
Yeah, they're really tough. And one of the reasons is because we don't know what we're going to walk away to. We don't know, we don't have any sort of external benchmark. And so if I have, offer from company B at $50,000 a year, and the company I'm negotiating with offers me $51,000, then I know right away it makes sense for me to take that offer compared to my alternatives. If I don't have anything and I just have a rough idea, I could go and talk to these three other companies. All of a sudden, I've lost that benchmark for me.
How do you reconcile like the part where, say, you're at your job and it's $50K and someone else offers you $60K? So on the face, it's more money, but you know exactly what you have at your current job, and maybe it's not bad. Like maybe they're just not able to give you the raise, which is why you're looking, and so you're looking in this other company, and that could work out great, but it could also just bomb, and then you're gonna have to come crawling back?
Yeah, I think that's it's a good question. I'm not sure I have a specific answer. There's always is the grass is greener on the other side of the fence phenomenon, and that's going to exist. I'm not sure that's specifically a negotiation challenge. I think one way where it could play out is if you have that conversation up front and you really understand, okay, my boss and my company is using these criterias, and if I stay another 6 months, I know that they're going to give me more than $60,000 because I understand how they make that decision. That may sort of make that decision a little bit easier for you. If it's some larger, like, okay, I don't know if I'm going to be happy at that other company, I'm not sure if I have any particular advice on how to think about that and how to avoid that kind of dilemma.
Right. How do you decide what to ask for monetarily? And I think after this, like, I want to go into other areas because there's other areas of negotiation, like besides just a job raise, but I'm curious on this one specifically.
So I think about it in a couple different ways. Certainly, there's the traditional, you can ask around and find what you should be making for your position. That's how most people who know or who have thought through the negotiation would, I hope, would at least ask that. They would ask mentors of theirs, friends at other companies, even friends in the company. They could, find out for my position, what should I be making, this year, next year, et cetera. There's also some more tools these days online. There's a salary.com, glassdoor.com, which you can actually look and see in my position in this part of the country, with my my number of years of experience, here's the salary range. So those can be super helpful. And I think that they can be when it comes to thinking about what are the parameters. Personally, I like to, again, I keep going back to that, the upfront conversation, because I think that you can get a very clear sense of exactly how much you can expect, and not guessing, not based on, broad market forces or trends, but you can ask your boss at the front of the year, look, if I want to make $150,000 a year in this company, one, is that even possible? What would I have to do? And here's the question that I absolutely love. Under what conditions would you actually be happy to pay me $150,000 a year?
I like that question. That's an interesting question.
It's a simple question, but it's not something that most people ask, right? Because they tend to be focused on themselves and what they've done and on the past.
Right. And in the heat of the moment, I think you have to remember that. And that's the thing. Like once you're in the room, right? You're in the room, and negotiation really should be a back and forth, right?
Yeah.
All right. So where do you who should be the person to start it? Or is your goal as the person looking for the deal or the raise or the sale or whatever it is? Should you be the one to start off with a price, or should you try to get them to tell you the price first?
Okay. Good question. I think that there's a lot of emphasis put around that, and there's a lot of advice online. I personally think that, if you've done everything else right, that doesn't really matter. If you've had a conversation at the beginning of the year and your boss says, hey, look, if you do X, Y, and Z, I guarantee you're going to be making $150,000 at this company, and you do X, Y, Z plus 1, 2, 3, as Andrew was referring, it's less important who puts the first number on the table. That being said, I always try and be proactive in negotiations. I always try and put a number on the table first, because you have, assuming, it's per year salary, you've put a lot of thought into this. You know what you feel you deserve, what you feel your boss has alluded to, or what you have a very clear sense of what they said that you could be making. So I don't see that there's any benefit to waiting to hear what your boss can or cannot offer, as long as you're not putting it down in the form of an ultimatum, like, give me $150,000 I'm out of here.
Yeah, or else.
Exactly. And secondly, there's been an immense amount of research on this. Other things being equal, whoever puts down the first number has more of an influence on the final number that you agree to.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you put this number out, how do you make sure that you're not going to scare them away? I mean, or is that not a thing? Like, if I'm making 50 and I say 90, is that just me being an asshole?
I mean, Dan, I've done that before. I've gotten laughed out of a room.
Yeah, so again, I think that this is why I keep going back to that upfront conversation at the beginning of the year. So here's exactly what I would say if I were in the room conversation. I would say, look, Matt and Andrew, we sat down a year ago, and I asked you a couple questions about what it would take to be a $150,000 performer here. You guys said that this is exactly what I would need to do in order for that to make sense for the company, and for you guys you would want to pay me that amount if I did those things. You guys remember that conversation?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, we've talked about in my performance review that I am on track. I am doing all those things. So, now I'm really at the point where I feel that salary figure makes sense for me going forward.
Another area that, and I don't know if this is similar, but negotiating a sale, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of people have a hard time, and I don't like it personally. Is going in and buying a car. I don't think it should have to be so hard. Just give me the price, and let me walk out with a car. but because of negotiation, we have to do that. So now we're forced to learn this technique, and with job raises as well. Are these two things similar? Do they have similar like tactics in order to be a successful negotiator?
I mean, I think that it depends on how you're defining a successful negotiator.
Getting something that you want at the end.
Yeah, and if you just look at like a final sticker price on a car, for example, there's a number of ways that you can go about doing that. And I tend to think that the traditional tactics that people use around, buying a car is the stereotypical one that they use around that, tend to be not very effective for negotiating a job offer because they tend to be very hard on the relationship. Like you mentioned, you can literally, if you highball someone with a ridiculous number, that may be fine if you're selling a car or buying a car, because you don't really care if you're going to see that person again.
True.
But if it's at your company, you're going to lose a large amount of credibility, especially if you take the approach that I'm advocating for, which is, hey, look, you said that I could make $150,000 if I did this, these things. I feel like I've done those. You've given me positive feedback throughout the year. Therefore, I want $250,000. Like, what?
Okay.
Who is this guy? You totally undermine the entire approach that you're taking, and you've gone back to this sort of, well, what's your number? What's your number?
Right.
And that's, I think, where most people don't want to be when they're negotiating with someone that they have to see every day.
Interesting. All right. So there is a big difference between those two.
I think that there is, and I think that even when you're dealing with a one-off conversation, to take these old school approaches can be risky. I produced a documentary this year, and for the first time ever, I put a couple different producers together with a director and got involved in some financing, and we got into Sundance this year, which was like a crazy cool experience. We went down to Sundance, and one of the other producers decided to find us a house, and he is a typical Hollywood, what you think of when you imagine the slick agent beating people down on price.
Right.
And I couldn't believe it, actually. I kind of felt embarrassed for myself that he got on the phone with this guy. I wasn't really involved, but he got him down to like 50% of the price that this guy was asking for in Park City, Utah, an amazing place during Sundance.
Yeah.
Usually it's 50% higher.
Yeah.
This guy got 50% below. I was thinking, man, I had a whole identity thing going on. Like, I'm supposed to be the negotiation guy. I wasn't even involved in this. I don't think I ever could have gotten that good of a deal, even if I was trying.
What do you do?
He basically used every dirty trick in the book, just leverage the relationship. Man, this is a good film. We're really counting on you, and like all kinds of different tactics that I won't really go into. But he got him down to like roughly 50%, and then the guy was so pissed at what he had agreed to. The guy was renting the house, that he looked for every opportunity to weasel his way out of the deal. And in fact, a week before Sundance, he actually booted us.
Wow. That sucks.
And he's like, that's it. You had one last minute change. One of the people there, our composer, was going to have his kids there. And he was like, that's it. I'm taking away the house. And then it got really ugly. The director had to get involved. Long story short, we ended up staying in the house, but we'll never stay there again.
Right. What was the film?
It's called Marmato. It's a documentary about a Colombian mining town, which we're still on the festival circuit, but all the listeners, you guys can check it out on Netflix in 2015.
Yeah, I will definitely check that out. That's awesome.
So there's one more thing that I want to talk about on the salary negotiation front, because I think it's a mistake that people make, and I can hear it sort of creeping into the way we're discussing it now, which is I think that people tend to have a salary negotiation conversation at the same time as they're finding out how they're doing. So it's a performance evaluation come salary negotiation. That can really come back to bite you in the ass. You don't want the first time that you're figuring out how your boss thinks you're doing to be in the conversation where you're asking for more money. So I always advise people totally separate them out. Go in, have your performance evaluation, have the conversation at the beginning of the year, find out exactly what you would need to do, have your performance evaluation conversation at the time of the year when that's supposed to happen. Mm-hmm. And then assuming that they tell you, hey, 2 thumbs up, you're knocking it out of the park, you're doing all the things we said we can do. Now you know that there is no reason why they would not want to offer you more money.
Right. And that's the time to go in.
Exactly.
Is there any, I think we touched on this a little bit in the beginning, but is there like a common mistakes that people make?
Yeah, there's tons of them. I think
I
one,
figured there would be. Yeah.
saying I have financial need.
Right.
I have student loans or whatever. This is a big mistake for a couple of reasons. One, your boss doesn't care. Like it's just, they like to feel that they're giving you a living wage, but they don't really care about your financial. You could have a gambling problem for all they know.
Right.
That's not their responsibility.
Right.
Also, if you ever get them to say yes, you're putting a cap on what you can make because you've just now set a precedent for the reason for giving me more money is financial need. And so unless my financial need greatly goes up, it doesn't make sense for you to give me more money. That's one. Some of the stuff we talked about at the beginning, not having a conversation up front to signal and be very clear to them that, I'm interested in progressing throughout this organization, not understanding what are the criteria that they use to evaluate salaries and salary decisions, not putting the first number on the table and sort of gaming it and waiting for your boss to offer you a salary number. These are all super common mistakes.
So I want to kind of go back to that car scenario piece, and I think like everyone pictures themselves on like the side where they're buying the car, but I'm curious, like what if you're the guy selling the car? Like what can you do to, because you want to not sell it for the same price down the street. You want to sell it for like $5,000 more. Are there like, ways like buy them flowers or something that kind of work?
It depends on who you're selling the car to.
Buy them flowers? Yeah, I don't want flowers.
I think that building a relationship anytime you're negotiating is important. Nobody likes to do business with people who they don't really know and that they don't really like. So if you can genuinely establish some sort of relationship with that person, that can only help you. It's not going to, especially in the example of a car, that alone is probably not going to make someone pay $5,000 more. But what it does do is allows you to have a more open conversation where you don't necessarily fall back into this haggling pattern. And I see, by the way, if it hasn't become clear now, I see a huge difference between negotiating and haggling.
They're not the same thing.
I don't see haggling and negotiation as the same thing. Haggling is a process whereby you put in a high number, I put in a low number. We make a series of concessions that seem really painful artificially, maybe to both sides. We threaten to leave, and then we maybe get a deal that's in the middle. I think that's one way to negotiate. And in my experience, it's just not all that effective. It's not all that sophisticated. It is what people have been doing for like literally tens of thousands of years. Ever since we started to barter in marketplaces thousands of years ago, that's what we've been doing. But in the last like 30 or 40 years, people have started studying it and thought like, oh, like newsflash, maybe we should be thinking about this process slightly differently. Maybe we don't have to make these really extreme demands, but we can instead seek to understand, well, why is it that you're asking for what you're asking for? And then come to a solution that seems fair and that works for both parties. So in the scenario of the car, for example, I think that having a good relationship isn't on its own going to make someone cave to a $5,000 demand or an arbitrarily higher price. But what it may allow you to do is have the trust to have a conversation where that person can tell you what they're really interested in. And you may be able to meet those interests, even if it's in something so quick as negotiating a car, in a way that provides extra value for them. So if you have a strong relationship, like let's say Andrew and I are negotiating that car and I'm trying to buy it from you, if we have no pre-existing relationship, we're probably going to jump right to price, right? You're going to say, here's what it is. I'm probably going to start devaluing the car, saying like, oh man, like, I don't know what you've been doing in the back seat there. Like, it looks a little sketchy back there. Or where's the rust on that door? And that's a tactic, right? I'm trying to devalue it so that you'll give me a lower price. If we have a good relationship up front, I'm probably not going to do that. And you can probably ask me direct questions around like tell me about why are you buying a car now? What's going on? And you may get to the fact, for example, which is actually true. If I were in New York buying a car right now, I would, as a Canadian, have no interest in dealing with paperwork, transferring or buying insurance. I hate that kind of shit. I don't know where to find a garage. Right. So if you could offer me a package like, look, man, I can take care of the paperwork for you. I can hook you up with my insurance and just change the name on it. I can hook you up with my guy who works in my garage. and you can keep getting the car service. That actually may be worth $5,000 more for me.
Right. Yeah, and the car thing's tough for me because I've never had a good experience negotiating a car deal. I have friends that are really good at it, and for me, it's just here's the number I want to pay, and then you just keep going in the back room, coming out with it. Oh, well, we can get you down to this. I'm like, no, I came in for this price. All right, let me go in the back room and just keep going in the back room until they come down to the price that I want because I did the research prior to. Is that, why do we have to do that? That's my question. Why is this a thing?
Yeah, it's old school, man.
Yeah, it sucks.
It really does suck. And more and more you see that people are getting away from that.
Well, TrueCar, right? That's what TrueCar is all about, that website where they do all the research for you on these used cars, and then it's like, you know what the car's worth. You walk in and say, this is what I want to pay.
Exactly. Absolutely. I mean, it sounds super cliche to say like, well, the internet changed everything.
Right.
But when it comes to like buying a car, it actually did.
Yeah.
Because before there was this huge asymmetry of information where the car dealer knew where the margin was, they knew where they could push the price to, they could bullshit you, and you had no idea. Now you can do all that research. You can be more informed about that car than the person selling it.
Yeah, and there's actually companies, CarMax, I think, is another company that there is no haggling. They don't do it. And they make that clear. And I think that's great.
Yeah, I do too, because nobody likes, I mean, it's not true that nobody likes, some people like it, haggling in a bazaar or marketplace.
Oh, I know people that love doing it. It's kind of a fun game. But that's another thing too. Is everything really negotiable?
What do you mean by that question?
So it's something I've heard so many times. This is the phrase that I've heard, which is everything's negotiable. You can walk into Best Buy and get a better deal, even though it's a retail store. Everything, is take some back and forth. You can always get a better deal. And I have people that live by that philosophy, and they really do get better deals than most people because they went they actually asked. They actually tried negotiating instead of not doing it. Like, you never know. In fact, I can give you, I had it on my brain, and it's such a stupid little purchase, but I went down to the mall and I wanted to buy Rosetta Stone to learn Spanish, and it was a $250 software for, I think, package 1 and 2. And I don't know, it popped in my head, and I'm like, you know what? Everything is negotiable. Let me try this out. So I said, hey man, I'll give you $200 for this. He goes, sold. I was like, whoa. I didn't pay. I just got $50 off just because I asked. And I've done that a couple times where I'm like, hey, I'm like, hey, how about I give you, $175 for this? And the guy will say, all right, how about $180? I'm like, all right, cool, whatever. It actually works, and you never know. Like, and so do you do that a lot in like your personal life, or is that something you think people should practice?
Yeah, I think that is everything always negotiable? No, it isn't. Sometimes you just can't get around it.
Maybe not at Walmart. Yeah.
And I think I agree with your the way you're teeing that up, which is if you ask for stuff, a lot of the time you will get it. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't believe the amount of time that I'm just in a clothing store or whatever, and I'm chatting up the salespeople, and I say, so, is there any chance I can get a discount on that?
Right.
And they will say yes just because I asked.
And a friend of mine, Carlson, who is really good at this stuff. He's really good at buying cars. He just negotiated a car deal. It was like insane. And he said, he's a military guy. He goes, every time I walk somewhere or I go to buy something, I always ask for a military discount. But not only that, he will go up into an airport and just walk up to the front counter and say, hey, is there any chance I can get an upgrade? Because he asked. And they might say, oh, we can't do that, but we can offer you this. And he usually gets a good deal out of it. Same with hotels.
Yeah, I do that all the time too.
Yeah, so it's not, maybe not everything's negotiable, but I mean, I guess there's a lot of things that you can just by asking you can get.
You can, and especially in terms of like retail, there's no real risk to damaging a relationship with someone at an airline counter.
Sure.
It's a totally legitimate ask. Hey, is there any chance I can get an upgrade? That's legitimate. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people don't. That's why it's working for your friend Carlson, for you, for me, for people who do ask is, most people don't. Mm-hmm. I want to tie that back into what we were talking about earlier with Andrew. You were mentioning that I think you said your wife has a difficult time asking.
Right.
Yeah, I think that this is a huge issue that we as men, as like three guys, we don't have visibility into. That most people will not ask. And for women, it's actually very challenging a lot of the time. Not all women, of course. It's really challenging. And the numbers show that they don't ask. On top of that, the way that women negotiate, to just say, look, well, women should now ask for everything and they should just negotiate just as assertively as men, is not just not very helpful advice, it's actually bad advice. Because studies have shown that if a woman negotiates the same way as a man, then she will be evaluated differently by the people not that she's negotiating with or who are just observing her. They've done a series of experiments where they have actors role play out a script. And when the man is role playing it out, participants observers describe him as very confident and intelligent. And when a woman is role playing out the exact same script in the same way, but just by virtue of being a woman, observers report her as being bitchy and domineering. And so
yeah.
it is a challenge for women that, one, they don't ask, and there's a lot of the time there's a reason for that. And this is a major, major issue. I was actually stunned to hear about the statistics when you talk about money-wise. If you look at two undergraduates who are coming out of college and they're given a first job offer for $45,000 a year, something like 70% of men end up asking for a higher salary and then negotiate, and something around 30, only 30% of women do. That didn't really surprise me. What stunned me was how much that makes a difference in terms of takeaway income at the end of the day. So if you negotiate one $5,000 raise when you're coming out of college, and you don't do anything differently over the course of your career, you just keep getting incremental raises at the same rate as the person who got $45,000, and you bank all of that and you put it away. Do you know what that represents over the course of your career?
How much?
I don't know.
$1 million.
Wow. Damn.
One negotiation over time compounds to $1 million. You don't have to do anything else over the course of your career except negotiate that one $5,000 raise at the beginning, and you're $1 million richer.
Damn.
So I'm curious because, and I think I agree with you that women can't approach negotiation in the same way because they'll be perceived poorly. But then, it's not like they can't negotiate. How might they then approach it? I guess from the other direction or something, so that they could get a raise or become a manager or whatever they need without being perceived as this terrible person.
Yeah, what are the differences in the negotiation room between men and women?
Well, like I was saying, if a man says look, this is what I want, this is what I deserve, he will come across more times than not as being confident.
Yeah, and
if a woman says those exact same things, more times often than not, she will be described as bitchy. And that's unbelievably unfortunate. I see that as a humongous problem that's way beyond, what I do. That's a problem that we face as a society.
Yes.
That's the way. By the way, independently of if the observer is a man or a woman.
I was going to ask that too. What if it's, two women or a man and a woman?
It's the same.
It's the same.
Women describe other women who are assertive as bitchy.
It's the same. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, so this is a humongous problem. I think it's one of the great injustices of the societies that we live in Canada and the U.S. And it goes way beyond negotiation. Yet at the same time, negotiation is where I fit in and what I work with. So I think that women can actually, taking the approach that we've been talking about over this call, of talking up front, asking a lot of questions, hearing the criteria come from the person who's evaluating you, rather than saying what you think you deserve at the beginning. I think that can be done equally skillfully, independent of what your gender is.
Okay.
There's one other thing which I've seen, a tactic which I read about from a couple female professors from Harvard and Babson College who wrote an article on negotiation that I found this technique. It's somewhat controversial, so I'll just, I tee that up. I'll preface it with that because it's not mine, so I don't get flack from, female listeners who are saying that what I'm suggesting is somehow sexist or misogynistic. But what they have found is that if in the conversation you're trying to say, look, here's what I am worth, it is more effective, and their studies have shown that it has been more effective for where a man can say, this is what I feel that I am worth, which is at the top of my field. a woman can reference somebody else saying, I've talked to a couple mentors of mine and they feel that I'm at the top of my field and that I should be paid commensurate with that, which is $150,000, $200,000, whatever the heck the figure is.
Right. So it's almost like passively saying what you're worth.
Yeah, it's a way of externalizing the ask. And again, I think that there are problems with that in that, it's unfair that women, that works for women and they can't just straight up say, this is what I'm worth.
Well, wait a minute. I mean, so if it works for women, wouldn't it also work for men? Maybe that's a good just general tactic.
I mean, it could be. I haven't seen any research into it. That was my initial reaction as well. Like,
yeah, maybe that's just a better approach, and it just happened to be working. It was just two women that did the study to find the answer for women, but really that's just the answer for everyone.
Yeah, and I mean, I think if you're coming across as arrogant or domineering in your negotiations, then yes, it is definitely a good tactic, regardless of your gender. There's another part of this for women, which is that a lot of women who I know tend to think that women are bad negotiators and they think that they're bad negotiators. And then sometimes I watch these women negotiating and I'm thinking, what the hell are you talking about? You are more skillful than 90% of the executives that I work with.
Yeah.
And what the research has shown, which is backed up, and I've definitely observed this as well, is women are incredibly good negotiators, particularly when they're negotiating on behalf of someone else.
And why is that?
I don't know. I'm not a gender specialist.
Sure.
Something about asking, it goes back to the asking for what you want. For some reason or some complicated set of reasons, women tend to have challenges doing that. But when it's asking for what someone else wants or deserves, women tend to be extremely effective in negotiating that. And I think that you probably observed this in your own lives. You look around at the women whether it's your mom growing up advocating on your behalf. Most people wouldn't look. I certainly wouldn't look at my mom and think like, well, women are bad negotiators.
Right.
I look at her thinking, man, she is badass.
Yeah,
she got me what I want a lot of the time.
Right. In order to sort of wrap things up, is there any like big, giant pieces of advice that you'd like to get out there for people who are looking to either negotiate a job raise or a better, or just another job, going in for an interview, or maybe just a purchase of some sort?
I'm not sure that there's anything that I've been sort of hiding or holding back that I haven't already said.
Yeah.
The biggest things are have the conversation early. Don't surprise anyone with it. Try and legitimately understand, how is your boss seeing this? What are their criteria for thinking about salary? Try and satisfy those criteria. And then when you come back to have the conversation, it's a totally different kind of conversation. It no longer feels like you're asking for something that they don't want to give. It starts to feel like, okay, I've met my end of this, quasi agreement. I think that the compensation can follow that.
I don't want to draw a parallel, but I'm going to anyway. Do you think? This sounds a lot like how dating works, right? So it's a lot of asking questions and just listening, and then being able to come back with a good second date.
I think that's a fair analogy. It's a fair parallel. I think that if there's one, when I work with people, and it doesn't really matter where they are in the world or what industry that they're in, the biggest skill that's lacking that is important for negotiation is listening.
Yeah, asking questions.
Understanding how is the other side seeing this.
Right.
And yeah, absolutely. Some of us tend to be better at that in dating. Others of them, if you've ever sat next to people on the first date, you know that sometimes people aren't very good at that at all.
Yeah, I think I'm one of them. People sitting next to me are like, that guy is not doing well.
He is bombing.
He is bombing.
Speaking of which, I sat next to Jonah Hill. I was in LA recently and he was on a first date.
Oh, are you serious?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Was he nailing it or was he bombing?
Actually, he was just kind of like this sweet, normal guy.
Yeah.
And I sort of sat next to him thinking, man, you're Jonah fucking Hill.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Own it.
Why aren't you owning this date? And he was just like a normal dude. He seemed like a sweet guy.
Yeah, I know. That's what I've heard about him too. But it's like you would think that guy would just nonstop be talking about himself because of what he's done. But yeah, it seems to be the opposite.
Yeah, total opposite.
Which is a good move. That's a good move, I think.
And well, they left together, so there you go.
Oh shit, Jonah.
I was like spilling Joan Hale's secrets.
Well, the next
He's gonna
girl
hear
we
this podcast and like, who the fuck is
right. The next girl we see him at the red carpet with, well, no, that's probably the
Yeah.
girl that Dan sat next to.
There you go.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for coming on and talking about us. I mean, talking to us about this, because it is something, I mean, I definitely struggled with in the past. I feel like I've gotten a little better from it, but I mean, a lot of things that you said have been really helpful.
Great. Well, it was my pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me on. Anytime that I can come back on, and it was great chatting with you. So happy to do it again.
Yeah, you know what? I would really like to do a roundtable about negotiation. And where can people find you? So we've talked about it in the beginning, but I want you to kind of give some places that people can find you.
Yeah, so number one spot is the blog, which is thenegotiationblog.com. That's where you can get access to content, what I'm writing about. I have a podcast on there about conflict management.
Perfect.
Called Con Man Talk. And on the corporate side of things, my company is Bridge Consulting, and the website is bridgeci.com. I also have that's going to be hosted on the blog coming up on October 30th. There is a webinar that I'm doing called The Fundamentals of Price Negotiation. And it is a 1-hour webinar for $97. And it specifically talks about the moment when you're in sales and someone pushes back on your price. You have an offer, you have a potential deal with a client, and they say, yeah, I just want to see if you can give me a discount, or I'm really going to need a discount on that.
Right.
How do you deal with that scenario? We have a 1-hour webinar totally focused on that. There's 100 seats available. Right now, access is open only to Listen Money Matters listeners.
Whoa. So
awesome.
So how much is that?
It's $97. It's on October 30th.
Cool.
So right now it's only open to your audience. And they can find access to it at thenegotiationblog.com/LMM promo.
Cool. I mean, I'll definitely do that. I'll give you 25 for it. No. Can we haggle here? What's the deal?
Yeah, I wonder how effective the sales would go if I actually said yes to that. How many people would actually show up?
Oh, that's really cool though. So and they can go to the negotiation blog to sign up for that.
Yeah, thenegotiationblog.com/LMM promo is where they can find it.
Nice. I love it. That's so awesome. And I think, you know what, Andrew, I think we should do that.
I think we need to do that.
Yeah, I think we need to do that. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I will be there because damn, do I need it.
Yeah. And I'll pitch the movie again. I want to hear about the movie a little bit.
Yeah, the doc is Marmato, which is, and I believe you can find it at marmatomovie.com, marmato.com. It's going to be on Netflix in early 2015. Right now we're on the festival circuit, so we have a Canadian premiere coming up in Vancouver for anyone who's in Vancouver at the VIF, the Vancouver International Film Festival. In Toronto, my hometown, we're going to have a couple screenings on October 1st and 2nd at Hot Docs, at the Doc Soup seminar, seminar, whatever you call it.
And the movie's about coal mining?
It's about gold mining.
Gold mining.
Actually, it's a town that's being threatened with forced displacement from a Canadian mining company. And so it's my director, actually, he lived in the town and shot the film over the course of 6 years.
Whoa.
So it's a really intense, intimate look at how do these things happen as they happen. So it's a very different take on your traditional documentary about these things. There's no narrative. There's no narrator. The story is told through the lives of the main characters. So, if people are interested in Colombia, in mining, in the terrible things that we Canadians are doing in the world, you can check it out.
Canadians don't do terrible things. What are you talking about?
Who knew, right? I
Right.
know, it was a shock to me as well.
Well, I love documentaries, so I will definitely be looking out for that on Netflix for sure. Because that's all I
Great.
do is watch documentaries on Netflix. It's like my biggest hobby.
Early 2015.
Perfect.
Well,
Dan,
come on up to Toronto, man. You guys are always welcome.
oh, I would love to go to Toronto. Wait, where's Toronto? Is Toronto East Coast or West Coast?
East Coast, like directly across the lake
Right.
from Buffalo.
Okay, cool. I really want to come up there. I think that'd be cool. Well,
Well,
Dan,
guys.
yeah, thanks so much for being on the show, man.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks again to you guys.
And listen, if you guys have questions about any of this stuff, and of course, you can just visit our websites, listenmoneymatters.com, and email us at listenmoneymatters@gmail.com. And if you like the show, please subscribe, whatever app you use via iTunes, specifically Stitcher. I don't even know what other podcasting apps are. There are Pocket Cast or some stuff. But make sure you hit subscribe. That way you can get it automatically downloaded to your player every single day, because we do an episode every day. And if you like the show, please leave a review, because reviews help other people learn about the show and also subscribe. And we could use all the listeners because we want to educate everybody here, especially about negotiation. So I want to real quick read a review from iTunes, and it's by Highwayman84. And he titles it Easy Listening or Easy Listen, 5 stars. Very insightful information without a typical dry finance mumbo jumbo. These guys make you feel like your drunk buddy is giving you the great investing/savings advice. I don't know if you'd want to get it from your drunk buddy, but sure, whatever. I can knock out multiple episodes in a row and they make my drive to work enjoyable. The only downside is these beer drinkers don't seem to realize that the best beer is brewed in the Northwest. I actually do know that the best beer is brewed in the Northwest, and I won some of it. So send it over to the upper Northeast, please. And if you guys want, go to listenmoneymatters.com/toolbox. We have all of our resources that we talk about here on the show there. So that's it, guys. Thanks again for hanging out with us. And of course, we look forward to the next episode. So later.
Later, man.